Today I am going to deliver a lecture on hotspot biodiversity, threats to biodiversity and conservation strategies of biodiversity. Introduction. A crucial element in conservation strategies is the protection of biodiversity outside as well as inside protected areas. To conserve rare and threatened species, it is necessary to protect their natural habitats. The establishment of protected areas is one of the strategies used in management of environmental resources. However, with environmental philosophy, terms, and approaches changing significantly in the past decade, the international community involved in protected areas policy, planning, and management considered it necessary to review the definition of a protected area to ensure that the definition embraces the wide range of areas under or requiring protection. This definition was derived at the Fourth World Congress on National Parks and Protected Areas held in Caracas, Venezuela in February 1992. A protected area is therefore defined as an area of land and or sea specially dedicated to the protection and maintenance of biological diversity and of natural and associated cultural resources and managed through legal or other effective means. IUCN in the year 1994. Hotspot of biodiversity. Biodiversity hotspots were originally identified by Norman Myers in 1990s. A hotspot, also written as hotspot, is an area which faces serious threat from human activities and supports a unique biodiversity with representatives of evolutionary processes of speciation and extinction. To qualify as a hotspot, the area must contain 0.5%, that is 1,500 of the world's 3 lakh plant species and should have lost 70% or more of its primary vegetation. Myers et al. In the year 2000 identified 25 terrestrial hotspots of biodiversity all over the world, a habitat of about 1,33,149 endemic species of higher plants, representing about 44% of the world's total vascular plant species. The number of hotspots in the world has now increased to 34. Of the 34 globally identified biodiversity hotspots, India harbors 4 hotspots. These are the Himalayas, Indo-Burma, Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, and Sundaland, Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The highest concentration of species is found in these areas. The rate of deforestation in these areas is very high and ecosystems have reached at a fragile stage. Though speciation and extinction are natural processes, the habitat loss due to human intervention for various reasons are the prime concern for species extinction. In fact, there is no precise extinction of the number of species which are being lost over the decades. Efforts are needed to conserve and maintain gene, species, and ecosystems for sustainable use and management of biological resources. Threats to biodiversity. The most serious aspect of the loss of biodiversity is the extinction of species. Communities can be degraded and reduced in area, but as long as the original species survive, the communities still have the potential to recover. However, once a species is eliminated, the unique information contained in its DNA and the special contribution of characters that it possesses are ever unlikely to be repeated. Once a species becomes extinct, its chances for further evolution are lost. The first noticeable effects of human activity on extinction rates can be seen in the elimination of large mammals from Australia and North and South America at the time humans first colonized these continents. Extinction rates are best known for birds and mammals. When environments are damaged by human activity, the population sizes of many species will be reduced and some species will go extinct. It has been observed that not all species have an equal probability of going extinct, and particular categories are most vulnerable to extinction, and such species need to be carefully monitored and managed in efforts for conservation of biodiversity. Following are such species categories. Number 1, species with a very narrow geographical range. Number 2, species with only one or a few populations. Number 3, species in which population size is small. Number 4, species with low population density. Number 5, species that need a large home range. Number 6, species that have large body size. Species with low rates of population increase. Number 8, species that are not effective dispersers. Number 9, species that migrate. Number 10, species with little genetic variability. Number 11, species with specialized niche requirements. Number 12, species that are characteristically found in stable environments. Number 13, species that form permanent or temporary aggregations. And lastly, number 14, species that are hunted or harvested by people. Human activity is the major threat to biodiversity, and following are the chief causes of extinction of species caused by man to fulfill his needs. Number 1, habitat destruction. The primary cause of the loss of biodiversity is not direct human exploitation, but the habitat destruction that inevitably results from the expansion of human populations and human activities. In many cases, the factors causing habitat destruction are the large industrial and commercial activities associated with global economy such as mining, cattle ranching, commercial fishing, forestry, plantation, agriculture, manufacturing, and dam construction, initiated with the goal of making a profit and leading to desertification. Number 2, habitat fragmentation. Habitat that formerly occupied wide areas are now often divided up into pieces by roads, fields, towns, canals, power lines, etc. Habitat fragmentation is a process where a large continuous area of habitat is both reduced in area and divided into two or more fragments. Habitat fragmentation is a process where a large continuous area of habitat is both reduced in area and divided into two or more fragments. Habitat fragmentation may limit the potential of species for dispersal and colonization. Number 3, habitat degradation and population. The most subtle form of habitat degradation is environmental pollution, the most common causes of which are pesticides, industrial chemicals and waste, emissions from factories and automobiles, and sediment deposits from eroded hillsides. Problem of acid rains and global climate change are also well known and of global concern. Number 4, introduction of exotic species. Significant losses are taking place due to changes caused by human activities. 3 such changes are the introduction of exotic species, increased levels of diseases, and excessive exploitation of particular species by people. Successful exotic species which are able to establish in new area may kill or eat native species to the point of extinction. Number 5, disease. Human activities may increase the incidence of disease in wild species. Animals are more prone to infection when they are under stress. Animals held in captivity are also more prone to higher level of diseases. Number 6, overexploitation. Increasing human population has escalated the use of natural resources. Overexploitation of resources also occurs when a commercial market develops for a previously unexploited or locally used species. The best example is trade in furs. Even if a species is not completely eliminated by overexploitation, the population size may become so low that the species is unable to recover. Number 7, shifting or zoom cultivation. The commonly practiced agricultural system, known also as Sweden agriculture, slash and burn agriculture, and zoom cultivation, greatly affects forest structure and species composition by creating a mosaic of forest patches of different ages. In shifting cultivation, plots of natural tree vegetation are burnt away and the cleared patches are formed for 2 or 3 seasons, after which their fertility goes down to a point where adequate crop production is no longer possible. Conservation strategies of biodiversity. Considering the immense values of biodiversity and subsequent rapid loss of the same during past couple of decades, enormous conservation efforts were made for restoring the biodiversity of various habitats. The detailed objective and management strategies are given in the following table. This table has 2 phases, that is on-site protection and off-site protection. Under the on-site protection, we have ecosystem maintenance and the species management. Under the ecosystem maintenance, we have the management systems of national parks, natural research areas, marine sanctuaries, resource development. And under this species management system, we have the management system of the agro-ecosystems, wildlife refuges, in situ gene banks, game parks and reserves. And the conservation objectives for the ecosystem maintenance are to establish a reservoir of genetic resources, to preserve evolutionary potential, to preserve various ecological processes, to preserve species, and lastly, to preserve representative ecosystems. Under the species management, we have the conservation objectives such as to promote genetic interaction between semi-domesticated species, to maintain viable populations for sustainable exploitation, to safeguard viable populations of threatened exploitation, to preserve species that provide important indirect benefits as for pollination or pest control, and lastly, to provide keystone species with ecosystem support. Under the off-site protection category, we have the living collections and the germplasm storage. The management systems for the living collections include zoological parks, botanic gardens, field collections, captive breeding programs. Under the germplasm storage, we have the management systems of seed and pollen banks, semen, ova and embryo banks, microbial culture collections, and tissue culture collections. The conservation objectives to maintain breeding stock, to facilitate field research and the development of new varieties and breeds, to facilitate off-site cultivation and propagation, to maintain captive breeding stock of populations threatened in the wild, and to make wild species readily available for research, education, and display. To provide a convenient germplasm source for breeding program, to preserve germplasm of uncertain or threatened species, to maintain reference type of collections as standard for research and patenting, to provide access to germplasm from wide geographic areas, and lastly, to preserve genetic materials from endangered species. Conclusion. The major causes of extinction of species are mainly habitat destruction, hunting of wildlife, introduction of new species, international trade of biotic resources, pollution of various habitats, catastrophic processes, and other accidental causative. Various kinds of on-site, in situ, and off-site, ex situ protection strategies have already been taken up as a part of global biodiversity conservation program. Most of the developed and developing countries already have taken up such conservation program as a national priority task. In many cases, the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources supports these programs, and they are periodically monitored.